Joe Aiello, Field Coordinator for the Rail Passenger Association. We are here in beautiful downtown Billings, Montana at the Greater Northwest Passenger Rail Summit. So in lieu of our traditional webinar that you usually see each month from the association, we're actually here on site, the entire staff. So we're going to do a series of interviews conducted by our communications manager, Madison Butler, with guests, panelists, industry leaders. So there's going to be a whole series of interviews. Following that up with two sit-down conversations with our president and CEO, Jim Mathews, one with Transportation for America's John Robert Smith, and Dave Strohmaier from the Big Sky Rail Authority. We're going to do that at the potential rail depot down here in Billings. That's going to be coming up later. So enjoy this series of interviews. They've been fantastic. This has been great events. Can't wait for you guys to see this. And then next month in September, we'll be back with our more traditional format. So stay tuned to railpassers.org/webinars for more information on that. So please enjoy these interviews. We'll see you soon.
We're here in Billings, Montana at the Greater Northwest Passenger Rail Summit, joined by a couple of RPA's finest. We have Mike and Abe here today. So Mike, tell us a little bit about what you're doing here and how your experience has been so far.
Well, I'm here not only representing the RPA, but also the Utah Rail Passengers Association. And I've been involved in planning this for about 6 months, so I'm very happy to see it rolling forward and hoping that this keeps us going in terms of getting new services in our region.
Awesome. And Abe, what brings you here today?
Well, I am presently working as a transportation economist and planner for David Evans and Associates out of Seattle, Washington. And I convinced them that they had to have a presence here, mainly because this is unprecedented in terms of a number of grassroots participants forming a chain of pearls that will eventually become the passenger rail corridor here, but also the federal money on top of it coming down and the rule provisions that make it actually impossible for FRA not to look at rural areas and long distance trains. And so this is a beautiful marriage of both grassroots advocacy and federal dollars that could then meld into reality. And in the middle of that will be a lot of work. And so it's the nexus point that's quite important. It's unusual in how purple politically it is. And at this point, there's enough momentum that I think it's becoming evident to, perhaps most importantly, the host railroad, as well as some state legislators that would otherwise be a bit reticent to support such an enterprise. So it's an exciting time, and I think that it's very important to note that it's a sold-out crowd, and which is further evident of how real it is. So let's just get through that EIS.
So, yeah. So who are you? What are you doing here today?
I'm Rick Arnish. I'm the Executive Director of the High Speed Rail Alliance. And, frequently on maps of where people are proposing passenger rail, this part of the country is missing from those maps, which I've always found very disappointing. Mm-hmm. So I'm very excited that there's an effort now to fill in that gap, and let's figure out how to get trains out here.
Awesome. So what are you most looking forward to, the different panels coming up?
Really understanding what the process is that the FRA is going to use to study and ultimately fund trains to places like Billings and other places.
Nice. And so for people for people who aren't attending today, what do you think is like a take-home message that you and your organization would want to share with those people?
In general, is, we really need a national plan to create fast, frequent, affordable, and an emphasis on frequent trains connecting the entire country. And it's really time to start demanding that of state capitals and Washington, D.C. We shouldn't have little pieces here and there like we've had. It's time for a true national effort.
For sure, yeah. And then, so for people following along at home, where can they find you online?
highspeedrail.us. So that's what we're for. High Speed Rail in the U.S. highspeedrail.us.
Sweet. Well, we look forward to hearing more from you and the upcoming events, and stay tuned for more interviews.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hey, we're here with Lyle and Katie from the FRA. They just wrapped up a really cool presentation on long distance studies, sort of what their teams are working on. So how has it been so far for y'all, and what were you here to present on today?
Katie and I were here to present on two FRA programs. One is the Core Identification Development Program, and the other is the Amtrak Daily Long Distance Service. I think the engagement from the community has been great. A lot of interest, as Amit said. This is kind of a grassroots effort. These folks in the room today were really instrumental in putting together the language that required this long distance study itself.
There's a lot of energy and excitement here around all sorts of rail, including long distance, so that's always exciting for us.
So, is this y'all's first time in Montana? Have you been out here for other projects?
First time I've been in Montana.
Nice.
Also my first time in Montana, so it's exciting to be here.
Hopefully we'll all be back here via rail very shortly. So for those who couldn't join us today, where can they contact you or find information about the projects you are working on?
So right now there are, for the long distance study, we have an email address that folks can email to ask us some questions, and that's longdistancestudy@dot.gov. Hopefully that'll appear right here.
Yeah.
And then additionally with the quarter identification development program, there's also a dedicated email address that's PAX, P-A-X, dev, D-E-V, rail@dot.gov. And I believe there might be some information on our website related to that program in particular. Since we do have a federal register notice on there, I encourage people to look online at that information. And there would be more forthcoming information on that program and the long distance study in the next month or so.
And do we have any last words you want to share with the members of Rail Passengers Association, how they can support your work and engage?
Well, I think that as the administrator said and other folks have said, really a great opportunity for folks to submit expressions of interest to the border identification program. If they're interested in that, there's more detail on FRA's website and on the federal register. And just to be on the lookout for future engagement opportunities, especially for the long distance study as that moves forward.
Thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time to be here.
No problem. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm here with Laura, who is the Planning Market Lead West for Cambridge Systematics. And Laura, you had made some comments earlier in the last session with Jim and Meredith and John Robert Smith. So kind of what were your thoughts on the last session and how's it been so far?
Well, the Greater Northwest Passenger Rail Summit is fully underway, and it's been fabulous. One of the first conferences after the pandemic, and it's good to see a lot of people. We're starting to talk about the economic impacts of rail and how can we measure those, right? So that we're also measuring the value of equity, of the value of taking down historic barriers to jobs and opportunities, which is difficult to do. It's not just about how many people you can move with a train, but what are the full, we call it the comprehensive benefits package or case for some of these long distance services and even the services in between.
So for those who are unable to attend, those who are viewing this at home, what would you say are like some key takeaways on the economic benefits for this region? And what would you like to see in people's advocacy moving forward?
Well, the key economic benefits, again, how do you capture, it's easy, and I do a lot of benefit cost analysis and benefit cases, and those are quite straightforward for something like the Northeast Corridor, which has a lot of repeat ridership and, pay high fares. And so what we're talking about today really is how to measure those. And I don't have, all of us have ideas, and we need to talk about these with the state DOTs and with the FRA about how these, other trip purposes could be maybe even just as equal as a business purpose, or how do you count these trips that people have to take by rail?
Yeah.
Is there a way to, differentiate trip purpose within the benefit cost analysis? Yeah. And again, that's not up to, that's what conferences are for, is to exchange ideas. So looking forward to more of this, and that was a great particular John Robertson back and forth, and
Yeah, sweet. Well, if people want to follow along with your work and your progress, where can they find you online?
Sure, I'm on LinkedIn, Laura Shabe. I probably should know the number by heart, but I don't. It's one of those. I have an unusual last name, so you can find me under there, SH. And I'm at Cambridge Systematics, and we'd love to continue the discussion.
Sweet. Thanks for joining us, Laura, and we look forward to your panel as well.
Yes.
Jim Mathews here, President and CEO of the Rail Passengers Association. I'm here with my good friend, John Robert Smith of Transportation for America. And I think it's terrific that we were actually able to be physically in the same place at the same time here in Billings, Montana, to talk about what I think is the most important issue in getting all the service started, which is transportation equity. And equity takes a lot of forms to talk about. One of the ways that happens.
It does, and conversations and discussions like we're having today are so much more impactful when you can do it face to face. And when you have an audience there that you can relate to, you can read the room, you can see their response to what you have to say. And it was, I thought, a fine panel today. And judging by the audience response, they agreed too. And of course, transportation and passenger rail equity, for me, is first regional. Are we treating the regions of the nation fairly as we provide access to, in this case, passenger rail? And clearly the answer is no, we're not. We've been heavily focused on one stretch of this country along the northeast coast, to the detriment of passenger rail throughout the rest of the nation. And we're here in Montana amidst an entire region of the country that is virtually unserved by passenger rail. And it's quite honestly been ignored.
They have been, and they desperately want the service. This is the thing, we're not here arm twisting people into getting them to support the concept of passenger rail. I mean, you have Republicans and Democrats all coming together in this room, at this hotel, saying, what do we do to get this started? What do we do to make this happen? And we saw the video from the governor of North Dakota saying that he wanted everyone to be able to take the train to North Dakota in 2026. That's remarkable. And the fact that we had Senator Daines and Senator Tester both saying the same things during the opening of this conference. This is a region that agrees that they need the service and they deserve the service.
Well, and as important as it was for the senators from the region and the governor to make their comments of support, in some ways you expect that because it's their constituents, but you had the Federal Railroad Administrator, Amit Bose, to make the trip out here. Just his presence said, not only do I know you're out here, I also know that you desire passenger rail and that you deserve passenger rail and that you're willing to invest with a federal partner in passenger rail. And I think FRA deserves tremendous credit for being much more aggressive on passenger rail. I've certainly seen it along the Mississippi Gulf Coast, where FRA for the first time weighed in on behalf of passenger rail in a dispute with the freight railroads. I thought that was tremendously important.
It was. FRA and DOT submitted a very strong brief in the Gulf Coast case. Very strong brief. And they were very adamant about the value of long-distance trains as part of that brief. They made the economic case in that brief.
And then that's what we touched on today. This isn't about coming to Montana where they already have a zeal for passenger rail and talking about it merely as a nostalgic return to passenger rail or just count me in along with everyone else. It was really about the financial impact of passenger rail. And I think the two of us together made it very clear that why do you measure investment in passenger rail only on fare box return? You don't do that with highways. You don't do that with aviation. You don't do it with any mode of transportation but passenger rail. No, and you said it best, the great value for passenger rail may not come back to the fare box. It comes back to the restaurant, to the transit system, to the hotel in the station stop area. And we're seeing more and more local governments understand the impact of having passenger rail can be on your local and regional economy.
Which I just think is extraordinary that here we are convened in this, I guess it's the largest city in Montana, talking Republicans and Democrats about bringing rail service in, having an economic benefits conversation. And to the point, the administrator shows up in person. We have representation in the Surface Transportation Board in person. We have so many people here, the right people here to make the decisions and make it happen.
Well, and I think there's a recognition that we have a great window of opportunity. More funding available for passenger rail than it's certainly in our lifetime. But it's a brief window.
That window is about this big.
And if you want to invest in passenger rail, this is your opportunity. And if you miss it this time, you may not get another opportunity in your lifetime.
That's correct. That's correct.
I'm here with Penny Roning, who's been an active member of the community here in Yellowstone County. I just want to gather your thoughts because this is the first year that this conference is happening. How do you see this impacting the future of Yellowstone County, specifically in the Billings area?
Thank you for that question. So I just finished a 4-year term on Billings City Council. So this is a passion project, not only for the city of Billings, but really for the entire state of Montana. We used to have passenger service in southern Montana for many, many years and then lost that. It absolutely impacted our economy. Without the rail service, Billings wouldn't even exist. We came to be as a city because of rail service. It has been critical within the development of all of the western states, and it still is. You know, one of the things we've been hearing about at the conference, which I think is very exciting, is how impactful rail service is to our rural populations in connecting them with our urban, but also our native populations, in being able to connect our native populations with services that they sometimes don't get access to on a daily basis. And so I think for those of us in the rural states like Montana, like Idaho, that are here, and we're seeing people from Kansas, from Washington, D.C., from California, from all over the country here in Billings right now, one of the things that I think is impactful just about that alone is it's connecting us as a nation, which is what the rail service was meant to do in the first place. And we're seeing it happen again.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Penny. And I think, a lot of people have misconceptions, especially about rural communities. And we're having conversations with some of the other guests about once you come to a place like this for the first time, all of those preconceived notions get washed away. And having this expansion of service, having more people come to town, what do you think is like a key takeaway for outsiders who want to support this project and support the future of this community?
You mentioned rural at the beginning. And one of the things that I'm passionate about within the state of Montana is that we are connecting that rural to the urban, not just as a connectivity, literally as what a train would do, but to the economy of the rural and what the rural economy brings to us as a nation as a whole. In these rural economies, we can never forget, these are the folks that grow our food.
Yeah, right.
They literally grow our food.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm excited about is hopefully, if it works, we're going to be hearing from someone from the Ukraine.
Yeah.
And that is impactful for the state of Montana because the Ukraine, what we've learned from what's happening overseas right now is how the world has been impacted by the Ukrainian farmers who grow wheat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that has had direct impact on the wheat farmers in Montana. Again, these are the folks that grow our food, not just for our country, but beyond our country. And sometimes we, in the more urban areas, forget that, one, we eat every day. And hopefully we want to eat more food that is actually grown by folks in our own country than eating more food that's been imported into our country. So it's actually helping to benefit the economy as a whole, but also benefit us in our healthcare systems because when we eat more quality food, which is what our family farms and ranches in the United States, their bottom line is the end consumer. That's those of us who are eating their products. That's going to lower our chronic health down, our health diseases down. It impacts more than just a literal connecting. It impacts us economically, our healthcare systems, all the way around.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today, Penny.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And it's so wonderful to meet you and welcome to Billings.
Thank you so much. Well, Elaine, thank you so much for being able to join us today. It's great to see you here at the summit. So share with the viewers at home a little bit about your experience and what brought you here today.
Well, when the pandemic started, I got interested in trying to figure out what I could work on with not being able to travel around, not being able to do things. I was able to get a hold of someone who put me in touch with Dave Strohmaier, who also had an interest in rail. Two of us helped organize a Zoom meeting, and a whole bunch of people showed up. And what do you know? And then in the meantime, Dave started the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority, and off we went to try and advocate for restoring passenger rail in the Pacific Northwest, the greater Northwest, actually.
Well, and I know you've been a participant in our webinars. We've had a lot of back and forth. So how do you see, those Zoom calls, summits like this, creating an environment where people can advocate? And what's your experience in that regard?
Well, I think, it's interesting. The pandemic has opened up a whole new world to people in order to do this kind of organizing and advocacy. Prior to COVID, you had to do a lot of traveling around. You had to maybe know people and know places, and Zoom's just changed that. It's changed the world, and in a positive way in this case. We've been able to use it with the webinars, with the various organizations that have gotten formed to gather people who have an interest. And once you get those people, then you can continue to meet, you can continue to talk, and now here we are in person. Not everyone, but at least most people. And it creates an energy that I haven't seen around passenger rail in 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen just this robust improvement in my lifetime, and listening to those with more experience share, what they've been through. So could you tell us just a little bit about what you were talking about today earlier? You were the first presentation today.
Sure. So my primary interest is in restoring the long-distance passenger rail line from Portland to Salt Lake, which travels through Boise. Part of that interest is that it then makes a piece of track available potentially for us to use as regional rail or commuter rail. And for me, I think that changes the way the whole valley that I live in can develop over the next 20 years as it continues to grow. It's one of the fastest growing places in the country. To date, it's kind of followed the same pattern as everywhere else, sprawled out into the farmland, and rail brings a potential that doesn't exist otherwise in terms of that development pattern. From a bigger picture, nationally, it provides a connection to places and things and people that, again, doesn't exist unless you live in the Northeast Corridor today. I also serve on a couple of national organizations. I'm chair of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee at National League of Cities, and we have cities all over the country who would die to have passenger rail serve their city. They're mostly smaller places. They don't have a lot of population, but they have a lot of need. They have a lot of equity interests and equity needs. And they've been left behind over the years in this country in terms of access to this, I think, vital transportation service.
So for those who aren't able to join us today, who are interested in how, Boise is serving as this sort of gateway between the greater Northwest and Pacific Northwest, where online could they find some resources, regarding those campaigns and the advancements of Boise?
Well, we're really just getting up and running in terms of getting stuff available online. Our MPO is part of this effort, and they're embarking on a study this year on the regional rail part of it. Obviously, FRA is embarking on the long-distance study. The mayor of the city of Boise is organizing a request to look at the corridor within Idaho and into Utah. And so over the next few months, I think if you just watch the City of Boise website, you'll see some of those. The other website to watch would be Compass, Community Planning Association of Southwest Idaho. It's our MPO, and they will also have some resources.
Cool. I think we are here with Chase, who's Government Affairs, Amtrak Northwest, coming to visit us from Seattle.
Yeah.
So how's your day been so far, Chase? You enjoying the summit?
Yeah, absolutely. It's perfect. It's great to see so many folks from around the region out here just excited about the opportunity that we've got to expand passenger rail, right? Obviously just about a year since we passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and it's really a great time to be thinking about what the future holds and brings and opportunities. It's just really exciting stuff, yeah.
Is there anything, uniquely interesting you've learned from all the panelists? I feel like I've taken in a lot of information in the last 2 days.
Yeah, it's been really good. I think some of my, it's like two favorite things. One, obviously out here in the western part of the country, we have a great and an expanded presence from our tribal representatives on the panel. And so I think yesterday's panel just talking about the opportunities to connect tribal communities to the larger network, right? Obviously, the Empire Builder does some of that, but getting folks either just the opportunity to connect around the country is really exciting stuff. The other thing has been our freight partners here and engaged early and talking about opportunities to work with them in partnership instead of in conflict. And so that's really, really cool stuff.
That's good to hear. Is this your first time in Montana? Have you been through here before?
Not my first time in Montana, but been here a couple times before. First time in Billings, though.
Same,
I can say that. Yeah. And it's been really great. I think a lot of great people. I grew up in Indiana, and a lot more mountains here. But other than that, people are the same. It's it's been really good, really great opportunity. Yeah.
Well, we're super looking forward to continuing our work with government affairs team, and it's nice to take this time together.
Well, likewise, we're happy to be here.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you.
I just want to congratulate you on all of the work that you've put in, because it sure has turned into an amazing summit.
Thank you, I appreciate that. It's been quite a slog fest, but I think we were getting through it.
Yeah, for sure. So you have moderated, you've supported, you've facilitated. What do you think is like your big takeaway from today?
Ultimately, building the whole regional collaboration. It's like, yes, with the Pioneer North Coast routes that we want to be able to go through, study them, hopefully be able to implement them, but they can't be done inside a silo. And we're really trying to show with this whole summit that it's for the full greater Northwest region, that people actually live here, and that we want to be able to showcase that and build up the services, improve the existing services such as the Empire Builder, California Zephyr, and so on. But that people live here and we can do well-tailored, very successful passenger rail operations in the greater Northwest region to the benefit of the people who live here and visitors who want to come see our amazing natural resources.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, just the caliber of stakeholders too. You know, you have some amazing sponsors. We had a whole panel that was talking about the integration of passenger and freight, how we can work together. We had people from tribes speak. We had people from federal offices, state offices speak. So just kind of talk us through, like, what was it like working on this collaboration and getting these stakeholders all involved?
It was a lot of coordination, absolutely. It was a lot of bread and butter project coordination, just trying to reach out to people, trying to follow up with people, and trying to get the key stakeholders, and especially stakeholders who can be able to communicate to other stakeholders well and effectively and have a constructive conversation. And that's what's been really amazing with our regional coalition here and the people we've been able to bring out here as amazing resources and the knowledge base they have to pull from. Since we don't have to, pardon the pun, we don't have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to operations out here, but we can take amazing precedents and learn from them and tailor them for our unique situations here, whether it be the Virginia precedents, whether it be stuff from the Gulf Coast, whether it be stuff from New England, or whether it be stuff from the past, such as the Pioneer North Coast routes, and be able to see what are the needs today. And with the coalition stakeholders, that we're able to focus on these aspects from multiple perspectives. So it's not just passenger rail advocates. We want passenger trains. We want to be able to travel. It's also disability rights advocates, senior advocates, medical care, families, education, their tribal advocates, and being able to get the key stakeholders to share their voice. And it's really ultimately being able to share the voice of multiple people in our region that will help carry things forward. Since those are real stories, they're real people.
Yeah, I think, just what you're saying about meeting people where they're at, the intersectionality, the identification of all of these different pieces that come together. You're having conversations that I think we would love to see a lot of the state and regional groups kind of grow into. And I mean, you're one of the youngest members of the board for RPA. You're young amongst the All Aboard Northwest crew as well. So how do you stay motivated? How do you learn from the people in the past while advocating for a future that, some of them are advocating for without any guarantee of seeing? It's a lot of selflessness on their part to educate, the millennials, the Gen Zs, and get us involved.
It's ultimately trying to listen as much as we're trying to talk or advocate to other people there and be able to bring our unique perspective. Since, nowadays we could be able to, we literally have an app for that.
Yeah.
But with some older generations, they want to be able to have quality of life, just being able to have the mobility to travel and be able to travel well and effectively, but being able to try to learn from our regional stakeholders and our regional national partners as much as we try to educate them and be able to offer unique perspectives. works. Since a phrase I take from a long past governor from my home state of South Dakota, that in life you need a lot of good help from a lot of good people. And we're very thankful for all the great help we've had from national team at Rail Passengers to Transportation for America to our regional partners to other advocates and other knowledgeable parties on what they're able to bring here and offer that illumination. And just keeping especially the lines of communication open. No one person, no one entity is going to know absolutely everything about everything, but they might know the right people to get a hold of. And that's why if you have those connections, those are what we're able to build for building our connections out here.
Sweet. Well, for people looking to build those connections from home, those joining online and following along with this video, where can they find your information online? Do we have some @ or some hashtags, websites we want to plug?
Hashtag, you can look at All Aboard NW or All Aboard Northwest. People live here, the hashtag.
Yeah.
And also our website at allaboard.nw for northwest.org is where we have all our resources for All Aboard Northwest, our regional and national partners, and what we've been trying to do today. We have Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn.
Sweet.
So you can be able to follow us online.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us today, Dan. We appreciate you taking the time, knowing you've got a lot going on today. So.
No, I appreciate all of you coming out here to the Great Wild West, and we hope that someday you're able to come back on the train.
Absolutely. Here with Randy and Spencer, who we've our first webinar ever participated in that. Have been big supporters of Front Range and Greater Northern connectivity. So let's start with Randy. How have you felt about this experience thus far, and what do you think is your most important takeaway from this conference?
Well, this has been a great meeting. I had a chance to attend Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority's board summit last summer in Lewistown, and this is just a growth and an extension on that. They brought in a lot of other partners across the Northwest, from the Pacific Northwest to the Midwest, and with all of the great energy provided by the new federal funding this year, this meeting has been very exciting. There's a lot of opportunity for all of the states, not only in the Northwest but around the country, to really take advantage of the new influx of federal funding for passenger rail. Very exciting.
Yeah, I think we've seen just a huge range of stakeholders, participants, and panelists. Spencer, you've been up on stage a couple of times now. So what was your experience like with your other panelists and your interaction with different stakeholders?
Yeah, I think it's great to kind of continue conversations that I think each of us in the industry kind of have, one-on-one or maybe two-on-one. But to be able to get on stage here in Montana and have those larger conversations around host railroads and passenger rail in a very public setting, I think it's important. And it's really helping to kind of change the paradigm of the conversation that we all talk about needing.
Yeah, and I think, intergenerationally, we've inherited a lot of the work that Randy and his cohorts have been doing. So how do you kind of see the next 5 years working out for you and your involvement in all of this?
Yeah, I think it's just continuing to push the conversation along, kind of again changing that shift in kind of idea of, you can't work with the class ones. Well, you can. In fact, you can work with them. This can be a productive win-win situation for everybody here, as long as we continue to collaborate early and often, like we talk about doing often.
Yeah, and so Randy, with the Front Range experience and Greater Northwest experience, where do you see some differences between the two regions, and what similarities do you see in their interregional connectivity?
Probably the biggest difference in Colorado, we were able to generate some support from the state legislature, the governor's office, and the DOT. Those things to some extent are missing still up here. The Big Sky Authority was a great effort by a large number of counties across the southern tier, but they haven't yet quite got the legislative support and the state DOT support that we had in Colorado.
Yeah.
And we've let them know that we think that's critical to them moving their project forward as far as the Colorado project is advanced.
And I think all that, there's certainly differences, but I think where there are similarities is kind of this, in Colorado, it really started at a grassroots level. Pueblo and Pueblo County really kind of pushed that narrative and that momentum early in the process. I think you're seeing that here. Missoula is a big supporter early and often. And so again, you can kind of bring those state level elected officials up to speed, but it really does start with the people.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of the people, so these people watching this interview will be joining us from their couches and cell phones. So if they want to get involved but can only do so online, where can they find your information as far as Front Range, projects you're working on? What websites would you recommend they check out?
Front Range Passenger Rail is the website for the Colorado project at this point. And Spencer might have some information about some other websites up here other than the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority website.
I would, send them to Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority. I think that's a great place. That's a good starting point to kind of get connected.
Cool. Well, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to many conversations in the future with you guys.
Thank you very much.
So we are here in Billings. We have had a great time, hosted by my friend Dave Strohmaier. Dave, great to see you. Why don't you tell everybody who you are and why we're here?
You bet. I am Dave Strohmaier. I'm chairman of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority here in the great state of Montana. We are in Billings, Montana for the first Greater Northwest Passenger Rail Summit that spans the states, connecting Chicago all the way to the Pacific Northwest and Seattle and Portland, Oregon. And we are having a good time and making great progress in support of passenger rail in this region and across the nation.
So we've been here since the weekend. Just wrapped up the meeting. I got to tell you, I did this with you last night too. I shared this with you. I'm going to share this with everyone else. So here we are in 2022. Dave came to our office in DC on September the 10th, 2019, and he said, "I want to have a train where I am." He's Missoula County Commissioner and wanted to talk about how we could do that. And we've had 30, 40 local officials come to our office with the same question: how do I get a train where I am? And a lot of times when we give them the whole brief on, well, here's the legislative piece, here's the policy piece, you got FRA and the freights and everybody else, and a lot of people get angry. And Dave was writing notes and had the other commissioners with him, and here we are 3 years later in Billings. We had an introductory video from the governor of North Dakota. We had the administrator of the Federal Railroad Administration in person to deliver the keynote. We had the Surface Transportation Board on site. We had DOTs from across the region on site. Anyone who could help make this a reality was physically here. And it was just in 3 years. So, I mean, Dave, it's amazing. I told you yesterday, I thought you've done a fantastic job, and you're a model for how this should be doing everywhere else in the country. And it's just, my hat's off to you. It's amazing.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's totally been a collaborative effort. And from that first meeting we had with you and RPA in Washington, D.C., our mission was to do something different and not simply try the same thing and expect different results, which basically here in the state of Montana, the southern part of the state of Montana, where we've been without passenger rail service for 42 years, the model that many folks have been operating under is, let's just try the same thing, try it a little bit harder, and that's not gotten us anywhere. So we took this model and took the bull by the horns, if you will, and ran with it, and that is, what can we do at a local level to establish a new governance structure for such a thing, and really be a catalyst for and a model for other places in the nation about how we can move the train down the track, so to speak.
And that was the homework that I guess you guys did, right? You kind of looked at the Montana Constitution and sort of the authorities and so forth to try to figure out, how did you guys come to that? How did you guys figure out, hey, we'll do a rail authority?
Well, what had not worked for the past 4 decades was disconnected communities, isolated, siloed communities, advocacy groups, passionate advocates making the case effectively to Congress, to our federal officials, the administration, to do something significant and transformative like restoration of a passenger rail route. So we looked at state law in Montana, discovered that counties in Montana have the ability to come together and to establish regional rail authorities. And that's what we did. And I would suggest to other folks out there, take a look at your state law, state constitutions. Do you have the ability to do something like what we did? And so right now we have 18 counties, a part of our rail authority, 3 tribal nations, Amtrak, BNSF, our state DOT, all at the table. And that's critical. We have got to get to the table early. And one of our signature accomplishments last year was working with members of Congress to get language into the bipartisan infrastructure law that will has directed the US DOT to conduct a nationwide study of restoring discontinued Amtrak long distance routes. And that's where we are.
Exactly, and I think that's why it was significant that the administrator was here this week to kind of not only to give the remarks, but to kind of see the energy and meet with the other folks and recognize this is a real project.
Yeah, it's not just as important as it is for rail advocates to get together, compare notes, and learn from one another. We wanted this event here in Billings, Montana, and representative of this greater Northwest region to come together and actually be part of the process of stakeholder engagement for this study that's going to be rolling out. And I think that is a big reason why we had the level of administration and congressional and elected official support and participation as we did. For crying out loud, we actually had the CEO of Ukrainian Railways join us.
I was going to bring that up. That was a very powerful moment. You want to tell the folks about that? That was incredible.
Yeah, so we've been working on this for actually months, seeing if we could, as part of this event and as part of trying to energize our constituents, energize folks across this region and nation really, to have an example of what can be done in the midst of adversity. And where better to look than the country of Ukraine, where they are maintaining a railroad in the midst, and a railroad network in the midst of a war with Russia. And so it came down to the wire, the last minute, literally the morning of the event yesterday, to finally pull this together. But we pulled it off, and the CEO and president of Ukrainian Railways was able to join us virtually and provide what I thought was just an amazing inspirational injection into this event of what they have been able to accomplish, what they're accomplishing as we speak this very moment. And the theme of our conference here, our summit here in Billings, Montana, was Together We Can Do This. And I think that was borne out with the testimony of our good friends in Ukraine.
It really was. It really was. And you talk about together. The other thing that I think is significant, BNSF was there the entire time. They are ex officio in the authority. And so, I think it's really important to bring the Class 1s into the process early. They are stakeholders in whatever outcome there is, and they can be great partners if you bring them in.
Well, it doesn't have to be adversarial, which has so often been the case in the past and characteristic even of passenger rail advocates. We've got a lot of work to do together to collaborate, to kind of cut the umbilical of some of the baggage we carry with us from the past. But the reality is there is synergy, there is opportunity for mutual benefit between the freight railroads and passenger rail interests. And so having them at the table is absolutely essential.
And I want to underscore that. They were not just at the table metaphorically, they were at that round table in the center of the room the entire time.
Well, absolutely, because some folks ask us, and rightfully so, where are the freights?
Right.
Where are the host railroads at in this? Looking to that as an indicator or a litmus test of how credible our initiative is. And I'm pleased to say that not only metaphorically, but very literally, they are across the table or at the table with us. And I take some... take that to heart, absolutely.
Right. So, I think the one thing that I want to close with, if I can, we're here at the depot, historic depot. We haven't had train service here in a long time, but you can see it's an active railroad. Platform's still here. We had a beautiful dinner here last night. The gala dinner was just incredible here. But what do you think the odds are that we're going to be able to take a train and get off here in 10 years?
Well, I can tell you this with absolute certainty. The odds are better than they have ever been in the past 4 decades. But I think it's absolutely within reach. We are at the cusp of kicking off this nationwide study that, by law, the results of which must be delivered to Congress by the fall of next year. we are going to be doing everything in our power to make sure that this greater Northwest region is well represented and is in the mix as far as those recommendations for restoration. The other piece of it is, and this goes well beyond the study aspect, in at least a generation, maybe more than that, maybe ever, I don't think there has been a time where there has been as much opportunity by way of federal funding available to implement projects as now. So for those who are worried that here we go again, yet another study that's going to get rolled out, recommendations made, and then it will sit on the shelf for another decade or more. This is not that time. There are very real resources to make this happen. It's not going to happen overnight, but I'm hopeful that within the next 5 years or so, we will see a passenger train right here in Billings, Montana.
I hope that too. I mean, that's been obviously a cornerstone of our work, really since the beginning. And that law, we have a seat at that table. Our association is written into that law to be a participant in the study. And so one of the things we intend to do is really push the idea that this can't be another study on a shelf. And that we can't look at these as, the saying is that the cathedral projects, right, that take many generations to build, and maybe your great-grandchildren see it. Our position going into the study groups is going to be, we have the political will, we have the money, we have the economic benefits case. All the pieces are in place to do this and to do it well and to do it quickly. So let's find a way to use this study to find a way to say yes, and not to find a way to say we can't do it.
I think that hits the nail on the head. For so long, we've been working from a place of scarcity rather than abundance, of what the obstacles are rather than what the opportunities are to get over those hurdles. And we are at that place now. And I look forward to getting the job done here and across the nation for that matter.
That's great. Hey, Dave, thanks a lot.
My
This has
pleasure.
been a terrific week.
Thanks, and thanks to RPA for all the good work you guys do.
Thanks a lot. Take care, everybody.
We've really had such an amazing time here in Billings, and the work that we're doing here is so important, but we can't do the work without all of you. So our supporters, our donators, make sure you follow along, stay in touch with us at Rail Passengers, railpassengers.org. If you want to support this work, think about making a donation a day so we can keep making videos like this, keep driving the mission home, and create a connected America.